Hey everyone, and welcome to the C edition of the Honourable Mentions. This was a tough episode to make. It just so happens that the C letter has just so many interesting languages, and it was so difficult to decide on which ones to talk about and which ones to leave out for another time. But enough about that, let's just jump right in. First off, the Cherokee language, also known as Jalagi Gawanihisti. It's really hard to find exact numbers in these, but as of 2010, there were approximately 820,000 people who claim to have some Cherokee ancestry in the United States. And as of 2018, there were approximately 316 to 376,000 enrolled tribal members of one of three federally recognized Cherokee tribes within the United States. 300,000 in the Cherokee Nation and 14,000 in the United Kiowa Band of Cherokee Indians, both of which are in Oklahoma, and 16,000 in the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. And out of these numbers, there are approximately 15 to 2,100 speakers of the language as of 2018-2019. Unfortunately, statistics get even sadder when you read stuff like about 8 fluent speakers die each month and only a handful of speakers are under the age of 40. Nevertheless, there are extensive preservation and teaching efforts. There's the New Kiowa Academy in North Carolina, there's the Cherokee Immersion School in Oklahoma, and there's even a smartphone app. Cherokee is one of the most documented indigenous American languages out there, and it has the most literature published in any indigenous language of North America. Cherokee is also the language of the first ever Native American newspaper. It's called the Cherokee Phoenix. It was first published in 1828. It later ceased publication, but it was revived in the 20th century and is still published today. Cherokee is part of the southern branch of the Iroquoian language family and is written using the Cherokee syllabary. Invented by an illiterate man called Sequoyah, he didn't know how to read or write, so he took a bunch of random books and a bunch of random letters from the Latin, Cyrillic, and Greek alphabet and started just assigning them their own random letters that he came up with. It's a syllabary, which means that every symbol, of which there are 85, corresponds not to a sound like in the Latin alphabet, for example, but to a syllable. Basically, imagine if every possible combination of pairs of vowels and consonants had their own symbol. For example, you have this A, which is pronounced like go, you have this Russian G pronounced like hu, you have this flattened Greek theta pronounced like na, and you have this random 4 pronounced like se. I've talked a bit about it in the A edition of the Honourable Mentions, where the Cherokee syllabary, among other things, inspired the Cree syllabary, which in turn inspired the Pollard script used by the Ahmao in China. And there's so much more to it. I'll definitely be coming back to Sequoyah and the Cherokee syllabary in later videos because its significance is immense, and honestly I don't understand how he isn't taught more in schools around the world. The man's a legend. Cherokee is very, very different from any Indo-European language out there, and chances are than any language that you've probably studied ever. While verbs constitute approximately 25% of the English language, in Cherokee that number is closer to 75%. A single verb can express an entire sentence in English. At minimum, verbs must contain a pronominal prefix, in other words, I, you, we, they, etc., a verb root, an aspect suffix, in other words, tense, or like the difference between I have eaten, I had eaten, and I was eating, and a modal suffix, could, should, would, might, etc. Some of these verbs might be tremendously long and some might be confusingly short. Take for example the word gega, I am going, which looks very small but contains all 4. G is the pronominal prefix I, e is the verb root to go, the second g is the ing, go, ing aspect suffix, and the a is the modal suffix, which is am. I am going. Cherokee has 17 tenses and 10 persons and a metric buttload of random prefixes and suffixes that would make your head spin, which can lead to some interesting word creation, especially for concepts that didn't exist before the arrival of the Europeans. For example, the word for attorney or lawyer, diti-yohihi, literally translates as he argues repeatedly on purpose with a purpose. Or the word for policeman, didaniyizgi, which literally translates as the final catcher, or he catches them finally and conclusively. Basically, the Cherokee are amazing and you should definitely read about their culture, language, and fascinating history. Next up, Chavacano. It's native to in and around Zamboanga City and the Mindanao Islands of the Philippines, spoken by about 600-ish thousand speakers, written using the Latin script, and is categorized as a Spanish-based Creole. Recognized as a regional minority language, Chavacano is the only language native to the Philippines, of which there are about 180, that is not part of the Austronesian language family. English is quite widely spoken in the Philippines, and Chinese is quite common in some areas, but these don't count. Chavacano is the only Spanish-based Creole in all of Asia. It bases most of its vocabulary on Filipino languages such as Tagalog and Cebuano, but derives most of its vocabulary from Spanish, namely Mexican Spanish. This is because back in the day, both the Philippines and Mexico used to be part of the Spanish colonial empire, collectively known as the Viceroyalty of New Spain. And there are these so-called Manila galleons that sailed the Pacific Ocean for like 250 years, creating much cultural exchange between the two, along with the goods they traded. What is a Creole, you may ask? Wikipedia gives a pretty good definition. It is a stable natural language that develops from the simplifying and mixing of different languages into a new one within a fairly brief period of time. When groups of people don't have a language in common, they begin to mix their own languages kind of together, simplifying the grammar, mixing the vocabulary, and a pidgin language arises. When a pidgin language begins to be passed down through generations, becomes more or less standardized in the sense of eliminating some irregularities, and it becomes a children's native language, a pidgin upgrades into a Creole. And this is basically how Chavacano came to be. The grammar is a bit different compared to standard Spanish, as well as some Philippine-specific vocabulary mixed in there, as well as some outdated Spanish words that have since then been replaced in standard Spanish. I speak Spanish fairly alright, I'd say, so I want to have a little go at reading it. 34 kilómetros desde el pueblo de Zamboanga, el Bungiao hundió tal barrio que estaba un desierto. No hay gente quien ta queda aquí antes. Abundante este lugar de maga animales, particularmente maga puerco y monte, gatorgaya, venado y otro más pa. Solamente maga pajareadores lang ta visita con este lugar. It's cool, I kind of understood most of it, like the meaning. Like, the animal words are definitely different, and that pajareadores word looks a bit archaic to me, but it's pretty cool. Next up, the Chia-Chia language. It's spoken mainly in and around the city of Bao on Buton Island of Indonesia by about 80,000 speakers. It's part of the Malayo-Polynesian branch of the Austronesian language family and is written using the Latin script and the Hangul script. Officially written using the Latin script, the language gained international attention in 2009 when there were reports of teachers using the Korean Hangul script to teach Chia-Chia in schools, which is the most random thing ever. This was first proposed in 2007 by Professor Chun Tai-hyun of the Hankook University of Foreign Studies in Seoul. It went as far as the mayor of Bao consulting the Indonesian government that maybe they could make this official for real. If you don't know anything about Hangul, just know this. It may look complicated, but it's actually the most logical and one of the easiest and quickest alphabets to learn in the whole world. There's even a famous comic from a few years ago that claims to be able to teach you to read and write Hangul in 15 minutes, and it's kinda true. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to look at it. It's been described as an alphabetic syllabary. This is because it has 24 letters and they are arranged into blocks of syllables. So for example, take the name of the language, Hangul. This is an H, that vertical stick is an A, and that inverted L at the bottom is an N, together forming the syllable Han. And in the second syllable, this is a G, this is an E, and this is an L, together forming the syllable Gul, and when combined together, Han Gul. The project of making it official for the Chia-Chia language unfortunately was abandoned in 2012. But as of 2017, it's apparently still used in schools and in local signs, which kind of makes it unofficially official alongside Latin. In my mind, this is like the equivalent of a random sub-Saharan African tribe randomly adopting Cyrillic to write their own language. Also, in Chia-Chia, Chia means no, which means that the language translates literally as the no-no language. Next up, Chatino, also known as Chak-Nya. It's native to the southern part of Oaxaca, Mexico, spoken by about 45,000 people, is part of the Zapotecan branch of the Otomanguean language family, and is written using the Latin script. As you may know, the official language of Mexico is Spanish, and the vast majority of people speak Spanish at home. However, the second article of the 1917 Constitution of Mexico defines the country as multicultural, recognizes the right of the indigenous people to preserve and enrich their languages, and promotes bilingual and intercultural education. While for the most part it was an on-paper-only thing, because most governments in the 20th century denied the use of indigenous languages in schools and didn't recognize the status of them either, but in March 2003 a new bill was passed, titled El Ley General de los Derechos Lingüísticos de los Pueblos Indígenas, which sort of de facto makes every indigenous language in Mexico a national language, gives it the same validity as Spanish in the government, and allows speakers of these languages to request official documents in their native language. France could really learn a thing or two from Mexico, just saying. Chatino is known for its crazy amount of tones. Just like discussed in the B edition of the Honourable Mentions video, the Bench language has 6 tones, while Mandarin Chinese in comparison has 4. Some dialects of Chatino have as many as 14 tones. 14! What? Which is still not the world record. Story for another time. It is a big claim. While it is a fact that Chatino makes heavy use of tone all the time, it's sometimes hard to tell exactly how many, because it might just be a sequence of tones or prosodic differences. In other words, rhythm, intonation, and stress vary wildly from dialect to dialect, from person to person, from context to context, which sometimes might be confused for additional tones. Professor Anthony Woodbury of the University of Texas, Austin, who oversaw the Chatino documentation project, notes, "It's as if everything that had been seen in linguistics was combined. It uses levels like you hear in many African languages and contour tones like you hear in Asian languages. It's strange when listening to it, it generally sounds, to me at least, like some kind of East Asian language, like Vietnamese maybe."
Chetty, when a chak hawa, want awanea. Awa stay on it. Psh, nangan naiwan. Stay lawan.
Another cool thing is that Chatino was only written in lowercase letters, with uppercase letters being reserved for tone and are written at the ends of words. Like in the name of the language itself, for example. It makes it look like the language is written backwards. Another cool interesting fact is that in 2012, the Natividad Medical Center in Salinas, California, had trained medical interpreters fluent in Chatino, as well as some other indigenous languages, to be able to provide medical services to remote communities, which is really awesome. Moving on. Next up, the Catalan language, also known as Catalan. Sorry I didn't get to be one of the choices for last week's SpeechLeech, but hey, maybe one day. It's native to mostly Andorra and Spain, as well as a part of France and even Italy, spoken by about 9 to 10 million people worldwide. It's part of the Romance branch of the Indo-European language family and is written using the Latin script. The only sovereign independent country in the whole world whose sole official language is Catalan would be the Principality of Andorra, sandwiched between France and Spain. But it's also a co-official language with Spanish in the Spanish communities of Catalonia, the Balearic Islands, and Valencia. Many people in Valencia will insist to call their variant Valencian, though many linguists say that it's just a dialect of Catalan and they're too close to be considered separate languages, but no politics. It's also recognized as a minority language in the Aragon region of Spain, the Pyrénées-Oriental region of France, as well as the town of Alghero in the northwestern part of the island of Sardinia, part of Italy. All of these areas collectively are known as the Països Catalans. Catalan is the sixth most spoken Romance language, after Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, and Romanian. Catalan originally evolved from Vulgar Latin around the 9th century and was widely spoken all throughout the western Mediterranean region throughout the ages. That is until the year 1479, when the Crown of Aragon came into a union with the Crown of Castile, and Spanish, or Castilian, began to heavily influence all the Catalan-speaking areas. From then on until the late 20th century, there were many laws in place that severely limited or prohibited the use of Catalan. But since the death of Spanish dictator Francisco Franco in 1975, Catalan became a co-official language alongside Spanish in all of the Catalan-speaking communities of Spain. It's been widely taught in schools as well. In Catalonia, most subjects have to be taught in Catalan, and in the Balearic Islands, at least 50%. Catalan also has this weird feature called a personal article. It's when a definite article is used before a person's first name, so you'd be saying El Martin and La Maria, which, I'm sorry, sounds just really weird to me. It'd be like saying the Martin and the Maria. To me personally, Catalan kind of looks like if Spanish and French had a baby and it was raised by Portuguese people because of the way they pronounce stuff. But that is it for today. It's legit crazy just how many languages letter C had, especially Native American languages, and hopefully I'll get to talk more about them in the future, but just to give you a taste of just how many there were: Chickasaw, Creek, Choctaw, Cheyenne, Cree, Woods Creek, Courier, Chilcotin, Chippewa, Crow, Chiweri, Cherokee, Cayuga, Coeur d'Alene, Comox, Chinook, Chukchansi, Cocopa, Comanche, Chitimacha, probably some other ones. Additionally, C had the Cornish language of Cornwall, which I'll probably make a separate video on as well, just like Breton. It also had Corsican, Chinese and Cantonese, Crimean Tatar, and so many others that hopefully I'll get to talk about more in the future. But anyway, today we travel to the sunny beaches of the Philippines, the southern coast of Mexico, the curious tropics of Indonesia, the Tornado Alley of central USA, and the eastern coast of sunny Spain. Hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and maybe leave a comment below saying which of these you found the most interesting and maybe some facts that I may have missed in the video. Thank you for watching, and peace out.